Today we will be discussing on feminist theatre. Feminist theatre emerged during the 1970s, and it was inspired by the activism of the women's liberation movement. Now, rather than the room of one's own that Virginia Woolf had demanded, women now wanted their own stage, a platform for feminist ideas and experiences. We know that the theatre, or if you're taking the case of any art form, there is a male domination, right? There's a male centricism that you can perceive. So feminist theatre came into being in order to have a room of their own, as Virginia Woolf has said, or had demanded for women. They wanted a stage for their own to express their ideas, their feelings, their voices, to express their voices. So the theatre collectives sprang up across the world. There are women's theatre group now, which is known as the Feminist, the Monstrous Regiment in UK, Spider Woman and At the Foot of the Mountain in US, Melbourne Women's Theatre Group in Australia, then in Japan, Doteka Boicheza and Sistren in Jamaica, and Canada's Nightwood Theatre. So these are the theatres that sprang across the world, feminist theatres that sprang across the world. And these groups began to flourish, and they were sharing some common aim of challenging female stereotypes. So female were portrayed by the male-centric, or males in a way which is understandable by them. Okay, so actually it was challenged by the theatre, how the female are portrayed by the male world. It was challenged by the female theatre, feminist theatre. And also they challenged the way the women body is, becomes an object, how it is objectified. That is also being challenged. And all these, while all endorse the general principle of women's equality. So you could see that all the theatres were, upholding the importance of having equal sort of a treatment or equality between men and women. That was a general principle that they endorsed upon. Even though they had the same principle, they differ in how this particular principle should be addressed, put across to the audience. Nightwood's priority, for example, has been to stage plays by and about Canadian women. So, they said that even though they all stand in the same principle of women's equality, they had different perceptions, they had different ways to address it. So Nightwood actually stage plays which were about the Canadian women, while Spider Woman's indigenous women's troupe. Indigenous means people who lived there, the original people there. They reflect the politics of Native American women's experience. So each had different ways to express, different ways to address, different ways to achieve their target. But everybody has got, or most of every feminist theatre had the same principle, that is women's equality. Okay. Then there were different political dynamics and styles of feminism influenced, and it influenced the direction each group took, because the way it has to get directed was influenced by the difference in the political dynamics that they wanted to portray. Okay, so in a radical feminist approach, At the Foot of the Mountain, a feminist theatre, they explored female experiences and sought to create from them an art form distinct from a theatre of patriarchy. So you could see that even in the writings also, the first thing that they did was they tried to write like a males, and secondly they tried to find fault or tried to criticize the male, and then in the third phase you could see that they were trying to evolve their own unique sort of writing. Right. So just like that, when you come into feminist theater also, these sorts of changes also impacted in the feminist theatrical space. So the theater of patriarchy. So they were trying to distinguish themselves from they're trying to, you know, try to bring difference between the theater of patriarchy. Uh, so that was there, and where male themes and characters rule. So this sort of a difference that they just wanted to make it fully a female experience, and want to make themselves different from the theater of patriarchy. So the male themes, and all those things were, you could say that more females were coming into the um, stage. Okay. The socialist feminist monasteries regiment was committed to new writing and collectively organized to give women the chance to work in all aspects of theater. So you know that theater experience or theater work is not just staging the performance. There is a lot of things involved in it, right? So each and every aspect that is involved in it. So the socialist feminist monsters regiment, they were into writing in new, like coming across or giving coming across new concepts, and also giving in women's opportunities to take part in all the theatrical works. Okay. British playwright Carol Churchill, who went on to win international acclaim, was among those commissioned by monstrous women. Okay. So there is another playwright, Churchill, who was who had this international acclaim, and she and it's not just her. It was there are other people. So like Simon Ben Musa, then Gerland Reinshagen, then Frank Araim. And we could see that like these people, these European playwrights of her time, Churchill was influenced by socialist feminism. Socialist feminism means bringing people, giving opportunity to people in the space, giving equal opportunity. And so her plays were theatrically inventive, as were those of experimental feminist dramatists such as Cuban American Maria Irene Fornes, or African American Adrienne Kennedy. So one thing that we need to understand is that when it comes to feminist theater, it has to be different, right? Because if they want to stand, they need to stand apart. People need to see new things in them. Only then we get attracted to that particular thing, and we try to regard it and acknowledge it, right? So actually, it was more challenging. The feminist theater was more challenging than the so-called the mainstream theater. So that as we earlier saw, we could see that their political dynamics and social concerns were coming into the theater. Okay, so that is what made them different. Then feminist theater actually emerged during the 1970s, and it tried to tell the stories of women, and they also tried to resist the marginalization of women, and they also work to destabilize the male gaze. Destabilize the male gaze. Now you have heard of male gaze, right? How the males perceive the body of the female, right? When the female is portrayed in cinema or in theater, how they are, posing it. So the male gaze, they were trying to destabilize the male gaze. The male gaze is the idea that the world is seen from the perspective of men, and that women are generally depicted as objects to be viewed or desired. So you know that how women are portrayed, and they're portrayed in the way how men would like to see women, and so they would be objectified rather than subjectified, as if they don't have any other matter to put forth. It's just an object like any other thing in the stage setting, just like a prop among the other stage setting. So in order to overthrow that male perspective, feminist theater has challenged both the content and form of theatrical plays. In terms of content, feminist theater has focused on how the sex and gender roles are examined, and often they reverse it and mock them. Just like when the male mock at the female, this theater actually mock at the males. Okay, so telling stories of often ignored but influential historical figures. So there will be historical figures who might not have got much of a recognition that is really required. So the feminist theater began to bring in those historical figures and tell stories about them, and then also telling the unjust stories of women who have been oppressed, how the women lot have been oppressed. So such sort of stories, and also criticizing the power structure that keep women oppressed. And in terms of form, feminist theater challenges all aspects of the production process, from plot structures to casting and rehearsal processes. A few features of feminist theater include inclusive, that is. So these are the form. Now we are discussing on the form that the feminist theater challenged all the aspects of the production process, from plot to feminist theater attempting to allow many different intersectional voices to speak in the stories that are told and throughout the rehearsal process. So how it was different in terms of inclusiveness, collaborative, alternative narrative structures, and how it become women centric more than male centric. Okay. So you could see that when one person, when in the theater, when one person speaks, you could see that that person speaks for some time, and then the other character would speak after that. So here, they could see that they're experimenting with different intersectional voices to speak, rather than you have several voices speaking together. So collaborative is it rejects hierarchical authority. So because they have been oppressed by this hierarchical, right? So a hierarchy. So they reject this hierarchical authority. And theater directors attempt to empower their actors by asking for their input and allowing them to make staging choices. So they ask, it is not like, okay, if you are a director, you are above the actors. Okay, so such sort of an hierarchy doesn't exist there. They don't feel ego when they ask for the actors' suggestions and opinion and all. So alternative narrative structures, it tends to reject the linear narrative, often opting for open-ended, circular, or episodic plots. It's like after this, then the next scene should be this, the next scene should be so. Such sort of a linear narrative, they rejected that. And also sometimes it would be an open-ended rather than a closed one. Okay, then they lived happily ever after. Such sort of things didn't exist. So sometimes it will be open-ended. It will be left to the audience to come up with the conclusion. Then it was women-centric. That is, it plays the women characters, the female characters at the center of action rather than the male characters. So you could see that feminist theater is trying to distinguish itself from the male theater. I cannot say male theater, but the mainstream theater in terms of form, in terms of content, and they were trying to bring in innovative things in order to stand out from the mainstream. Okay, thank you.